getting a foot in an institution, right? Because the publishing industry, I mean, Singapore literature is so dominated by not just Anglophone, right, but also Chinese, English writers. So, what do you think is the importance of brown representation in writing in Singapore?
I mean, other than the usual, breaking away from the dominant narratives that we have is also, I think brown writers have this. We tend to also like look back at like history, because a lot of our history is often like forgotten. So I would like to like give a shout out to like Puja Nancy for featuring a lot of the like veteran Malay women writers at last year's like Singapore Writers Festival, because it breaks away from this idea that Malay women are just sitting at home, we're not educated and things like that. But also I think along the way I've realized that we need to continuously have this representation, because I think sometimes even when you've done a lot, it gets, buried underneath, right? You're either kind of seen as like the angry brown person, or people, might kind of tag on you because it makes them look good, diversity. But essentially, like, you're still invisible in many ways, right? So this continuous, effort of like representing or passing the baton, as I like to like say it, to like I think the younger, community. Because I guess sometimes people in the scene or like, activists like to kind of like hold on to their like legacy, but I think it's important to like hand it over so that it continues, right? I don't know if I should share this analogy, but like, should I?
You say that,
I mean, between the three of us, I'm the only like Malay woman in the book, right? And I think it's been very interesting to see how people react. So like, I like to make fun of like Yen and Chris, because sometimes, like Chinese men who happen to know them, happen to be same college from them, will be like, oh, have you read this book? And then I'm like, yeah, I've read that book. And then, have you seen the play? I'm like, not really, because I was in the play, right? So this, sometimes people consume, it's not just important to consume like media from brown people, but to also, I think, make the effort to know who they are. Right, so that it's not just we do have enough brown writers, but we question them, they can't name names.
Otherwise, just like token representation.
Yes, it's token representation, right? So it's not just I know about this book, so I'm an ally. But you don't really
on a bookshelf,
like
a Zoom call.
Yes, but actually who wrote it, who edited it, you can't tell. So I think that's also like I think important.
I've seen you talk about it on your Twitter.
Yes, it's just funny to me. I'm like, I don't think it's malicious. It's definitely not malicious, but it's also a very good representative of how I think it's also a gender issue, right? How I think it's a community see brown women, right? We're like often at the sidelines and forgotten, right? Or like when we write, people think we're angry or we're attacking, but that's not it.
And so, since both of you are writers, right? Could you share a bit more about your experience in the industry or in the scene, and like what advice you would have for like aspiring brown writers listening to this?
What? My God, are we? You're more in the scene than me, right, Sarah? You're so popular on like social media.
I feel like
this
there's a word, the imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
I think a lot of my writings, was based actually like. I mean, not just like I think my experience as a Singaporean Malay woman, but a lot of it also came from when I was working in the newsroom. I think that also gave me like a lot of access to understanding how things are, and I think like I know sometimes when you're a minority, it feels like you have to compete with everyone because the space for you is so small. But that's not the case. I mean, Brown is Haram came from a collaboration between me and Chris, right? We're like, let's just like collaborate, and I think it led to a lot of like really cool things for us together, but also us individually. Each of us have our own projects, which is really cool, and I think that's that. Like, I think one advice is like don't be afraid to collaborate. don't feel like you have to compete with other minority people for a spot. That's
Yeah.
what I guess people want you to think, but there's always space for you, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. I think this is also just going back to what you were saying, Maisara, about like passing the baton. I guess my sort of uncharitable take is, again, I don't know if it's because of the nature of how small sort of the scene is, but like it ends up sometimes sort of like unwittingly being like driven or shaped by like personalities, right? As opposed to like a community. And so then you have like specific people who hold a lot of sort of like clout or power and influence, and like maybe don't necessarily know sort of when to like let other people speak. So I think actually a good way to directly challenge that, like you said, is to collaborate, is to ensure that maybe there isn't necessarily need to sort of actively challenge this, like, like a hegemonic voice or whatever, but it is about just actually trying to build a community and let that flourish, as opposed to trying to be like competitive. I think, I mean, I can speak for myself and say that like I think I am still like obviously learning how to write. I don't think I know how to write, but I am also just like very open, and I think there are people out there, obviously there are some people who maybe like won't, but like I think there are people out there who like I think like want to help or are excited to read what young people or younger people, I guess I am old now, but like like younger people, what they're saying, I think that to me is, at least for me personally, I'd be excited to read what other people like are saying, and if they like are looking for thoughts or whatever, that to me is exciting for me, at least right now. Like I'm very happy to like help out or whatever, and I'm sure there are other people also who want to do that.
Well, I mean, you can edit this part out later. But I just wanted to say, one of my friends from primary school is in your book.
Oh.
And and I remember she was super excited about it, when I guess she got the news that she was going to be published, and she was like telling everyone, hey guys, I got published in this book.
Nice.
And then I saw the book at SWF last year in the bookshop, and then I took out her poem and I took a picture, I sent it to her, and I was like, oh my god, I found your book. Which was really, really exciting to me. And the thing that, and so I just wanted to say, I thought it was like super cool that in your book she got a platform to be published, especially since she's been writing about issues of her identity and like the way she understands whatever, like for years and years now. But anyway, if you would
Wait, I have
like
stuff to say though.
Oh, you do?
No, but like, I agree that affirmation is so important for young writers, because I think what you guys are doing is really like trying to lift the gate, because the literary community is so gate-kept, right, sometimes, and it's like, you guys just want to let these people know that their voices deserve to be heard as well, and their writing is good as well. I think that's really precious, because I think writers especially, maybe they start writing at a young age, but then if they don't get affirmation, then they give up eventually. And I think this a larger struggle perhaps for minority writers who won't even get equal chances to be published. So I think that's what's even more precious about this anthology. And I think also like, because we're talking about advice, right, for young brown writers and stuff, because I have this friend of mine who is queer and brown, and he told me that he has this struggle that back in school he would always feel the need to be a model for his community, to project the image of excellence on behalf of his community, and but then he shared with me that he's trying to unlearn that. So I think that's something I can't say for the brown community, but I hope that's something people can take away, that they don't have to feel like they are the vanguard of their own community. Just be the vanguard of yourself, just do the best you can.
I think that's something that I think every brown person definitely can relate. You have to be successful because you feel like if you're not, then people will blame it on your community, right? And that's why a lot of us burn out, because we don't really get to rest, because when you rest, you're a lazy Malay, So I think I'm turning 30 this year, so I feel like it took me a long time to be able to be like, I don't really want to be the high achieving Malay woman anymore, and that's fine, right? I think I want to define what success looks like, in my own terms. And if it doesn't match up to the majority, I really don't care. So I think that's also very important, to set your pace. At the end of the day, you also come to realize that you depend on your community to help you paved that way,
Yeah.
you know, because you also meet people from the majority like, oh, it's great, let's use you because you're like a template for diversity, but when it comes to where resources are, you're often excluded.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, going like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to be the like high achieving Malay, I don't want to be praised by the majority, you know, that is, I think, a sign of like a step forward actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sort of similar to what the both of you are saying. Another like sort of aspect of this also is what we've discussed, and I know like Maisara has brought this up quite a few times. Also, just sort of like the fear or the worry that we're now like artists / writers who write about race and like nothing
Yeah.
else. Like that is like
Yeah.
our thing now.
Yeah.
Which is also like I think something that sort of disproportionately affects
Yeah.
minority people, right? You
Yeah.
suddenly, you know, you suddenly think like, oh, I guess because they are a minority person, they should or can talk about race, and like that's it, right? You label them as someone who talks about race as opposed to just like a writer,
Yeah.
period.
Yes.
So that's definitely something that like I think is also something else that speaking to definitely like younger people who are beginning to write or who are beginning to think about things would really just be to like, I think as much as the pressure is there, I think it is a valid fear, right? I mean, I definitely sometimes still struggle with like what do I do with my voice, or what should I say? But obviously it is damn tiring also, right? And so like I think for young writers especially, or young artists, is really just to create as much as you can and create like different things. Because I don't know, I feel like I'm not saying it's inevitable, but like I think for younger people, like I think the exploration is something that you should really like do, as opposed to like 30-year-old people who like this is it.
Yeah.
We're race thought leaders for the rest of our lives.
No, I think what Chris said is true, right? Like, we don't want to be boxed into
Yeah.
just, oh, okay, Chris and Maisara, they're only gonna do like race. Like, no, I want to write like maybe like something like I want to write a romance novel, maybe like without the race element,
Yeah.
right? And that should be perfectly fine. Yeah. But I think it's a progression. I think something that both of us like eventually have to learn to kind of like take a step back as well,
Yeah.
so that we can move on to other things that we want to like explore as well.
Is there any one thing that you hope that non-brown readers will take away from reading your book? I know earlier you mentioned, you don't have a target audience or anything like that. But if like someone like Hao Yang read your book, what is one thing you hope that he would glean from it? Something that you hope maybe he'll understand now.
How about not higher? How's kind of enlightened one? I mean, how about the average Chinese person on the street?
Nice.
I'm not gonna say like enlightened or not enlightened because I feel like even within more progressive circles, race is still very like
Yeah, of
a
course.
topic that a lot of majorities still don't understand, right? That's why a lot of raw writers are still talking about intersectionality because you don't really see it in these kind of spaces. Very simply, I think when a brown person is talking about race-related issues, it's not a threat to you. Like, we're not threats to you. We're not here to like take away your privilege or like demand that you give everything to us. I think acknowledging that your race helps you get where you are now.
Yeah.
It's not something that like immediately erases your effort or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, and I'm not gonna go into like, we want you to like this and that. But I think that is a step that is feel like I would like to still see more
Yeah.
people in the majority community, like Chinese people, like acknowledge whether you see yourself as like enlightened or not. Just acknowledging that helps a lot also. Yeah, because you can read 10 books of race, but if you don't want to acknowledge it, if you don't want to do the work within yourself, as cliche as it sounds, then I feel like there's really no point in talking about like progression in that sense, right? Because it's also acknowledging your own privilege.
No, I totally agree with that because acknowledging your privilege is really so important because to kind of combat the narrative that where you are in life is simply due to effort, because I mean this cuts across race and class because there's so many factors that we can't control when we are the minority, whether you live in like rental estates or whether you're brown. Like these are factors you can't control, but which have impeded your ability to achieve in life. And simply getting that acknowledgement of privilege from the majority is, I think it's comforting. I mean, for me, even if it doesn't achieve any kind of societal change, that comforting effect still matters to me. Yeah. I mean, but beyond acknowledging privilege, is there anything else that like majority can do?
I think I would like to throw that question back to the majority because a lot of times we're asked like, what should we do, right? We're expected to come up with a solution, even though we pretty much highlight like, hey, these are structural issues, these are issues from the community itself. But there's this sort of like, okay, we're still expecting you to tell us what to do. And that's a form of privilege, right? Like I think it's essentially making the work to come up with the solutions. We're not asking you to talk on our behalf, but look, at the end of the day, it's like someone causing harm, and then at the end of the day you still expect the victim to come up with solutions, right? When the effort should be done by the person holding the status quo, or the person who has the power to kind of make the policies or make the change, which is why I think it's not like there's no one answer to like what can we do, like are we talking about individuals, are we talking about organizations, are we talking more in like a government like status kind of thing. But essentially I think just making the effort, right, to be like looking at like, I guess maybe an example could be like the organizations that you guys are in, and just like, do we have enough minority representation? And even like, are the minority representations that we have are the ones that we are comfortable with, right? Are we still using certain people in the community to maintain status quo, right? Because I think when you have a minority for the sake of being for the sake of them, because they are minorities, then it just becomes tokenism, and we still see that a lot. So I think taking the works to dismantle structures that you've already upheld over the years, I think that would be a great step, right? I think I wouldn't say that the guidelines or like guidance in how to create solutions is not that, it's like whether you make the effort or not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least in terms of like what I hope people like, two things. I think number one, like what I hope people like at least take away is that they understand that like race doesn't sort of exist on its own, right? Like I think something that we write in the introduction is that like no one entry is just exclusively about race, right? Like it cuts across different things. Like race or racism manifests in very specific ways because of the other identities you hold on to. And I guess we hope that sort of comes through the book, to understand that like, if you want to be anti-racist, you also have to be someone who like thinks about like toxic masculinity, or things about how like racism shows up in gendered ways. I think the other thing, and thinking about like solutions, or like which is definitely a question that like I guess people ask, definitely, right? Like what can we do? I always sort of like think a lot about I think when we think about like sort of individual action, I always sort of get a bit kind of like is there like meaning, is there value in asking that question? Because it's like, I don't want to be like, call out casual racism, that's so like that's so lame. Like really, like obviously yes, you should, but also it's like, is that going to suddenly mean that like our ethnic integration policy is going to disappear? Is that going to ensure that like SAP schools are going to disappear? No. So I think when it comes to like what solutions you can do, I think it is really thinking about how is race like upheld here, and like who like benefits from like I think these structures being upheld, and knowing that as an individual what you can conceivably try to do is to actively challenge then like the specific like sort of political powers that like uphold these things, because I think the only way is to really go to the source line, to like really think about like actively challenging the powers that be, because or not the structures aren't going to come down. You can call out casual racism all you like, but these things still exist.
I think also like understand that it's a continuous work, you know, like it's not something like what Chris said, like, oh, I called out this uncle for being racist, I'm good, I'm an ally, right? Or I read Brown is Redacted, yes, you know, I've done my one reading. No, it's a continuous effort. Whether it's relooking at your own self or structures, it's not something that's gonna stop,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the thing, right? Sometimes people assume that, oh, we've done enough, but actually, like, there's more to be done.
Yeah.
So I think once you have this mentality that, hey, you know, oh, you know, like sometimes you have like Chinese people will be like, oh, like, you know, they hear incidents of racism and they're like, oh, so
so
tired.
sad.
And so sad, so tiring. They use the word tiring. Like, okay, but it's even more tiring for us to have to like go through that, right? And also understand that, you know, at the end of the day, you get to step away,
Yeah.
right? You get to step away and like block the noise. We can't like you know, step away from our identity and like, oh, we don't, yeah, I'm too tired to face racism today, maybe tomorrow. No, we don't get to do that. So I think, you know, just understanding that, you know, it is going to be a continuous effort. If you're an ally, you need to understand that it is a continuous effort, right? And it's an effort that we do expect from you. We're not gonna like sugarcoat it and like try and be nice all the time. You know, I think that's what that is what is expected, right? That we sugarcoat it so that it appeases to the majority. So no, like you can't expect things to be like sugarcoated all the time as well.